Hello and welcome to Plus Bites from English Plus Podcast, where we dive into a kaleidoscope of captivating topics in one power-packed episode. Ever felt that perfect click when you and someone else just get it? When you truly see eye to eye? Our English Express segment will explore that beautiful connection. Then, prepare to journey back in time with History Bites as we question the dramatic narratives surrounding the fall of Rome. Was it really a sudden crash, or something far more complex? From there, Pep Talks will help strengthen our inner resolve by discussing how to build resilience. Mythbuster will debunk the age-old myth about whether all publicity is good publicity, and Gods and Heroes will transport us to the icy depths to meet a formidable Inuit sea goddess. Philosophy Nuggets will have us pondering the very fabric of reality, while Questions That Matter asks what it truly means to be authentic. Later, What They Said uncovers the timeless wisdom in starting something important now. Get ready to marvel at the bustling ecosystem that is you as Science Sparks looks at your microbiome. Unsolved Mysteries will chase the enigma of ball lightning. Our Word of the Day celebrates the turning points of the solstice. And finally, Why It Happens will solve that kitchen mystery of why your coffee makes a sudden, dramatic escape from the pot. It's a journey through language, history, personal growth, myth, philosophy, science, and everyday wonders. So grab your curiosity and let's get started. This is Plus Bites from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning. Have you ever had that wonderful feeling of being completely on the same page with someone, where you explain an idea and they just get it instantly? Or perhaps you both arrive at the same conclusion independently? That sense of shared perspective, of genuine agreement, that's what we capture when we say we see eye to eye. But what's really happening in those moments, linguistically and emotionally? This is English Express from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Ever have one of those moments, where you instantly connect with someone, you just know what they mean, you're on the same page without a ton of explanation?
Yeah, totally. We've all felt that, I think.
Right. It's often described using that phrase, seeing eye to eye.
Exactly. And, well, at its most basic level, to see eye to eye just means to agree with someone. Simple as that.
Okay. Like, give me an example.
Sure. Maybe two colleagues finally see eye to eye on a new, marketing plan.
Right. Agreement.
Or, on the flip side, you might hear that two friends don't see eye to eye on, say, politics or something.
Ah, okay.
Interestingly, it feels like we often use it when there's a lack of agreement, to point it out.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, but let's maybe dig into that image a bit more. Eye to eye. Mm-hmm. It feels like more than just like a mental checklist of shared opinions, doesn't it?
Definitely.
The visual, looking directly at someone, it suggests a shared perspective. Almost like you're both viewing the world from the exact same spot.
Exactly. It really speaks to a shared vantage point, a common understanding that kind of resonates beyond just intellectual agreement.
So deeper than just words.
Yeah, it's about a shared vision, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Not just agreeing what something is, but maybe even the underlying feelings or values tied to it.
Ah, okay. That sense of truly being on the same wavelength.
Yes, that's it.
And when that happens, wow, it's pretty powerful, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Things just click. Collaboration feels easier, smoother. And there's a real sense of validation, too, knowing someone else sees things the way you do.
Mm-hmm. Have you noticed how much easier things feel when you're in that kind of alignment?
Totally. It's like a weight lift.
Exactly. There's a kind of harmony that emerges. Friction is reduced, which, streamlines efforts, whether you're just brainstorming ideas or tackling a big project. And that feeling of being truly understood, well, it fosters stronger connections, makes communications so much more efficient.
Okay. But is it always the goal? Constant agreement?
Good question.
I mean, sometimes those differing viewpoints, they can spark really innovative ideas, can't they? Lead to better solutions, maybe.
That's a really vital point. Yes.
If we always saw eye to eye on everything, wouldn't we risk missing out on, crucial alternative perspectives?
Absolutely. Diverse thought is essential for progress, for innovation, healthy debate. Even disagreement sometimes can challenge our assumptions.
Right. Push us a bit.
And ultimately lead to more robust, more well-rounded outcomes. So yeah, seeing eye to eye isn't about everyone having the exact same thought about everything all the time.
Okay, so maybe the real significance of the phrase isn't about, constant consensus.
Maybe not.
But more about recognizing and appreciating those moments, those specific times of profound alignment when they do happen.
I think so, yeah. It highlights those special instances of shared understanding. And those can feel incredibly comforting, can't they? Really solidify a connection.
Yeah, definitely.
So the phrase, it serves a practical function, just indicating agreement. But like you said, on a deeper level, it points to our sort of fundamental human need for connection, for mutual understanding.
It's about more than just swapping information.
Way more. It's about finding that common ground, those shared ways of seeing the world, that shared perspective again.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe, for everyone listening, think about a time you truly saw eye to eye with someone on something important.
Yeah.
How did that connection feel? What was that like for you?
Or conversely, maybe think about a time when a disagreement, not seeing eye to eye, actually led things toward maybe a better unexpected outcome.
Interesting angle, considering both sides.
Yeah, I think looking at both those kinds of moments can really illuminate the complexity of, human connection, the value of shared and differing perspectives.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Picture the scene. Hordes of barbarians swarming over the walls, flames engulfing the Senate, the mighty Roman Empire crashing down in a single epic finale. It makes for great movie scenes, right? But was the fall of Rome really like that? Did this colossal superpower, which dominated the known world for centuries, just end one Tuesday afternoon? Or is the story a lot more complicated, maybe even less of a fall, and more of a slow, messy unraveling? This is History Bites from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
You know that image we all have in our heads? The fall of Rome, really dramatic invasions, statues toppling, the whole Hollywood thing.
Yeah, that big spectacle idea.
Right. But what if that picture isn't quite the full story? What if the transformation of the Western Roman Empire, leading up to around 476 CE when the last Western emperor was deposed, what if it was less of a sudden collapse?
And more like a very, very long slow burn.
Exactly. A slow burn.
That's a much more accurate way to think about it, I'd say. That cinematic view definitely sticks. But
for the people living through it?
Yeah. For the people actually living in the West back then, it wasn't like the lights suddenly went out one day. It was gradual, a reshaping.
Okay.
Think of it less as like one single event and more like a cascade of interconnected problems that just built up over a long time.
Right. Okay. So not a lightning strike, but more like a gathering storm. A perfect storm, maybe.
That's a good analogy. A perfect storm of factors.
So let's dig into that storm. What was brewing inside the empire itself? What were some of those internal weaknesses kind of eating away at it?
Well, there were quite a few. Imagine a political system where emperors were constantly being, assassinated.
Yeah, that doesn't sound stable.
Not at all. It creates huge instability. Makes long-term planning pretty much impossible, right?
Right.
And then corruption was just massive everywhere, undermining trust, diverting resources.
Okay, so political chaos, corruption. What about the economy?
Big problems there, too. The empire had become really, really reliant on slave labor.
Which came from expansion, I guess.
Exactly. So when the empire stopped expanding, that main supply of cheap labor just dried up.
And that would stall things.
It did. It hindered innovation, productivity, and on top of that, you had rampant inflation.
So money's worth less and less.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Devaluing the currency, making everyday life harder for ordinary people. Plus, just the sheer size of the empire.
Just too big to manage.
It became incredibly hard to govern effectively from one central point. It was just stretched so thin.
Wow. Okay. So it really sounds like the core was weakening quite a bit.
Definitely.
And then you add in all the activity happening on the borders. With the groups we often just lump together as barbarians.
Right. And that term itself is a bit problematic, isn't it?
Yeah. It paints them all with one brush. How should we think about those interactions more carefully?
Well, it's really crucial to move beyond that single label. These were very diverse groups. You had people like the Goths, who'd actually had dealings with Rome for centuries.
Some even served in the Roman army, right?
Exactly. Integrated to some extent. Then you had others, like the Vandals or later the Huns, arriving with different motivations, often seeking land or maybe fleeing conflicts elsewhere.
So not all just invaders.
No, not at all. Interactions range from, peaceful migration and attempts at integration to outright raids, of course. That happened too.
And having these groups within the army, that sounds tricky.
It could be. It sometimes led to divided loyalties, further instability, and just constantly trying to defend those massive borders. I mean, the strain on the military and the treasury was just immense.
So internal decay meeting these complex external pressures.
Pretty much, yeah.
Were there any other factors maybe contributing, things that are maybe less obvious?
That's an interesting point. There's some evidence suggesting potential climate shifts.
Climate change,
possibly impacting agriculture, making it harder to feed everyone. And we shouldn't forget about devastating plagues.
Like the Antonine Plague.
Exactly, centuries earlier. But things like that had already significantly weakened the population. Reduced society's ability to bounce back from all these other challenges piling up.
Okay, so putting it all together, that date, 476 CE, it wasn't really the moment everything suddenly crashed down.
No, not at all. It's more like putting a condemned sign on a building that's been structurally unsound for a really long time.
I like that. The building was already crumbling.
Precisely. The Western Roman Empire was incredibly fragile by that point.
Yeah.
And it's always worth remembering, the Eastern Roman Empire.
The Byzantine Empire.
Yeah, that continued and actually flourished for another 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So this whole fall narrative is really about the West.
A specifically Western transformation. And what did that transformation look like? What were the big changes in the West afterwards?
Well, you saw a fragmentation. The West broke up into smaller kingdoms, often fighting amongst themselves.
There's a less unity.
Definitely. Large cities and long-distance trade saw a decline, at least for a while. But interestingly, the church.
The
church really stepped into that power vacuum in many ways. It became a major unifying force, very influential in the new sort of political landscape that emerged.
It really does paint a much more complex picture, a slow reshaping, like you said, not a sudden collapse. So thinking about all these interconnected factors, the internal stuff, political, economic woes, the external pressures from different groups, maybe even climate, disease, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you had to lean one way, which factor do you think ultimately played the most decisive role in transforming the Western Roman Empire? Was it more the rot from within or the final pushes from the outside?
That's the question, isn't it? And honestly, historians still debate it constantly. There's no simple answer. It's really the interplay, the combination of all those elements that ultimately reshaped the West. They all fed into each other,
A true perfect storm. Fascinating stuff.
Indeed.
And that was another Bite from English Plus podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Have you ever felt completely knocked off your feet by life? Maybe a job loss, a relationship ending, a health scare, or just a series of frustrating setbacks that left you wondering how you could possibly get back up again. It's a tough place to be, and it's perfectly okay to feel overwhelmed. But what if getting knocked down wasn't the end of the story? What if you possess the ability to bounce back, to adapt, to find your footing again, perhaps even with newfound strength? That ability is called resilience. This is Pep Talks from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Life throws curveballs, doesn't it? Things like losing a job or a relationship ending, maybe a health scare. Those moments can feel just, overwhelming.
Absolutely. It happens to everyone.
Right. But what if the real key isn't like dodging those punches, but how we actually get back up?
That's a great way to put it.
That's really what we're digging into today. Resilience.
Yeah. And it's important to be clear what it isn't, right? It's not about being some kind of superhuman.
Or never feeling pain. Definitely not that.
Exactly. Or just pretending everything's fine when it's clearly not.
So what is it then?
Well, fundamentally, it's our capacity, our ability, really, to navigate those really tough times, to cope with the stress, and crucially, to recover.
Okay, so not an unshakable shield, more like something flexible.
Precisely. Think of it maybe like a muscle. It's something that actually gets stronger the more we consciously work through challenges. It needs exercise.
I like that analogy. A muscle, not a shield. So how do we start building that muscle? What are the key elements?
Okay, well, a huge one is perspective, how we look at things.
Right.
When something tough happens, it's so easy for our minds to just spiral, get stuck in those negative loops. Why me? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
But people who tend to be more resilient often find ways to reframe the challenge.
Reframe? How so?
So instead of, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
They might ask something more constructive, like, okay, what can I actually learn from this situation?
Or maybe what parts of this can I still control, even if it's small?
Exactly that. It's finding a perspective that's helpful, that gives you some agency back. And let's be clear.
It's not toxic positivity.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It's not about pretending the bad isn't bad. It's about finding a useful angle.
Yeah.
Something that empowers you even a little bit.
Okay. Perspective. That makes sense. What else goes into this resilience muscle?
Connection. Connection is absolutely vital.
People?
Yes, people. We're social creatures, right? Leaning on those supportive networks, friends, family, maybe even professionals gives you immense strength.
How does that work exactly?
Well, they offer different viewpoints. For one, sometimes you're too close to the problem. They can also just lend an ear or offer practical help when you feel stuck.
Yeah, just knowing you're not totally alone in it must be huge.
It really is. Think of those connections as like stress buffers or shock absorbers for lice bumps.
Shock absorbers, I like that. Okay, so perspective, connection. What about when you just feel completely drained by it all?
Yes. That brings us to self-care. And honestly, it's often the very first thing we ditch when we're stressed out.
Guilty. You feel like you don't have time, or it's indulgent somehow.
Right. But prioritizing the basics, things like trying to get decent sleep, eating reasonably well, maybe some gentle movement, just taking moments to rest isn't a luxury. It's actually crucial.
Crucial how?
Because it builds up your physical and mental resources. It's how you actually refuel the tank so you can cope effectively. You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
So taking care of those basic needs actually helps us handle the bigger stuff.
There's another key piece to this. Adaptability. Flexibility, really.
Being able to roll with the punches.
Kind of, yeah. Life rarely sticks to the script, especially when adversity hits. So resilience involves being willing to be flexible.
Yeah.
To adjust your plans when the original path gets blocked.
Like a sailor changing course.
Exactly like that. Adjusting the sails because the wind changed. The destination might still be the same, but you might need a different route to get there.
So being open to new strategies when plan A falls apart?
Precisely. And look, it's so important to remember, this isn't about trying to avoid the storms of life.
Because you can't, right.
You really can't. They will come. Resilience is all about how we navigate them when they arrive.
Okay.
And every single time you make a conscious, constructive choice in response to a setback, maybe you reach out to that friend, or you consciously reframe a negative thought, or you make yourself rest, or you adapt your plan, you're actually strengthening that resilience muscle.
So each challenge is almost like proof.
In a way, yes. Proof of your ability to endure, to learn from it, and to keep moving forward. So maybe a question for you listening is, what's one small, manageable step you could take this week, just this week, to nurture your own resilience?
Like what?
Could be anything, really.
Yeah.
Maybe reaching out to reconnect with someone you haven't spoken to in a while, or noticing a worry and deliberately trying to reframe it, or even just scheduling 5 minutes of quiet time for yourself.
It's those small, consistent actions, isn't it? Building that muscle bit by bit over time.
Exactly. That's how it grows.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Ever heard the phrase, there's no such thing as bad publicity? The idea is that any mention in the press, any headline, whether it's praising you or dragging you through the mud, is ultimately good because it keeps your name out there, keeps people talking. Sounds kind of plausible, especially in the wild world of celebrity culture, right? Get people talking, stay relevant, even if it's for the wrong reasons. But is it really true that all publicity is good publicity? This is Mythbuster from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
So we all know that saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. The basic idea being that, well, any chatter, any mention out there,
Yeah.
it keeps you relevant, yeah.
Good or bad, people are talking about you.
Exactly.
It's a pretty compelling idea, isn't it? That just sheer visibility equals success somehow.
Yeah, and you can see why it caught on. I mean, history's got plenty of examples, right? People who stirred things up.
Oh, absolutely. They caused controversy, but, they stayed famous, maybe infamous sometimes.
Infamous, yeah, maybe not admired, but known.
Known is the key word there.
And sometimes it even feels like that's the goal, like deliberately pushing buttons, making really bold statements, even maybe manufacturing a feud. It can feel like a fast track to getting noticed.
It definitely can be. It's almost like a branding strategy for some, isn't it? This sort of rebel image.
We see it all the time.
And there's no doubt controversy creates an immediate spike in attention, a buzz. But the real question is, Does that kind of attention actually build anything lasting? Or, genuinely good?
Which really makes you think about today. Things feel really different now.
How so?
With how fast news travels, especially online, and this whole phenomenon of cancel culture.
Right.
Does that old saying even hold water anymore?
That's, I think, the absolute critical point now. It used to be just about being seen. But how the public sees things and how quickly it's changed so dramatically.
Yeah, negative stuff can just explode globally in like seconds.
And the consequences can be incredibly serious.
Seriously, we're not just talking about, a bad review in the local paper anymore.
No.
We're talking about huge online firestorms that can erupt and just trash someone's reputation almost overnight sometimes.
And when it's really negative publicity, we're talking credible accusations or deeply offensive comments, major ethical scandals. Right. The impact can be absolutely devastating. We've all seen it. Careers just ending.
Endorsements pulled, projects canceled.
People forced to resign. And trying to rebuild that public trust, it's incredibly difficult, sometimes impossible.
It feels like that old saying just completely crumbles when you look at those real-world results.
Really does.
People lose their livelihoods, face massive backlash. It's hard to see the good in any of that publicity.
And the context is just so important, too.
How do you mean?
Well, what might be a minor blip for one person, depending on their image, their audience, their field,
right,
could be absolutely career-ending for someone else. There's no single rule for how any publicity lands.
That makes sense. And it's not just about the initial hit either, is it? It's also about how you react.
Oh, massively. The response is crucial.
Like a genuine apology, maybe showing you've learned something that can sometimes help, maybe.
It can soften the blow, yes. But denial, defensiveness, getting aggressive.
Yeah, that usually just pours fuel on the fire.
Exactly. It speaks volumes about accountability or the lack of it, and that really shapes public opinion long term.
So, really, believing all publicity is good, it feels like a pretty dangerous myth today, a real gamble.
I'd agree. It's dangerous.
Just getting people talking about you isn't the same as building trust or, actual success.
Not at all. They're completely different things. Notoriety, just being known, shouldn't be confused with positive influence or people actually liking or respecting you.
Yeah.
The saying just misses all that complexity. It ignores the real harm negative attention can do.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Can you, listening now, think of a time where bad publicity clearly just tanked someone?
Or maybe even, surprisingly, a time when controversy seemed to actually help someone out.
What factors do you think were really at play in those situations? Thinking about those specific cases really shows the nuances, right?
Definitely. It helps us move past that simplistic, frankly outdated idea that all attention is good attention.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Imagine living in the stark, beautiful, but unforgiving Arctic landscape. Your life depends almost entirely on the seals, walruses, and whales you can hunt from the sea. Now, imagine that the abundance or scarcity of these animals is controlled by a powerful goddess living at the bottom of the ocean. A goddess with a tragic past and hair that gets terribly tangled when humans break taboos. How would you appease such a deity? This is the realm of Sedna, the formidable Inuit ruler of the sea creatures. This is Gods and Heroes from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Imagine the Arctic, stark, beautiful, incredibly challenging. Survival there for the Inuit really hinges on the sea, on the animals within it.
Absolutely. Seals, walruses, whales, they're fundamental.
But what if the number of those animals wasn't just, nature being nature? What if a powerful goddess way down deep was actually in control?
You're talking about Sedna, a really formidable figure in Inuit tradition, definitely.
Right, Sedna. So she's not just a deity, she's kind of the power of the ocean and tied into this whole balance thing.
Exactly. She embodies that power and, that very delicate connection between humans and the environment they rely on.
Okay, so let's get into her story because, it's pretty dramatic, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It usually starts with her as a beautiful young woman, maybe a bit picky about who she'd marry.
And that leads to trouble, I gather. Like a bad marriage.
Often, yes. Sometimes the story says she marries a bird spirit, maybe a fulmar or a petrel, who isn't what he seemed. He takes her away to this remote island.
So she's isolated. Then her father steps in.
Yeah, he hears her pleas, or maybe just regrets his role in it, and he goes to rescue her. They escape in his kayak, but the husband stirs up a terrible storm.
Okay, chaos on the water. And this is where the really pivotal moment happens.
This is it. The defining, almost brutal moment. The storm is raging. The kayak's about to capsize.
And her father, he panics.
He does. To save himself, he throws Sedna overboard.
Wow. Just throws her out.
Throws her out. But she clings to the side, desperately trying to get back in.
No.
He takes his knife, and as her fingers grip the edge, he cuts them off, one by one, joint by joint.
That's horrific, but there's more to it, right? It's not just violence.
Much more. This is where the magic happens. Those severed fingers or finger joints, they don't just sink. They transform in the water into the first sea mammals, the seals, the walruses, the whales, the very creatures the Inuit need to survive.
So her sacrifice, her actual body parts become their sustenance. That's an incredibly direct link.
It absolutely is. It connects her suffering directly to their life source. After this terrible act, she sinks down to the bottom of the sea.
And that's where she rules from, this underwater realm.
Yes, she becomes the powerful ruler of Adlavan, which is sometimes seen as the Inuit underworld, and crucially the guardian, the controller of all those sea animals she created.
So, okay, she's down there holding the keys to the pantry, basically, but her mood, her state, it affects things up here on the surface.
Profoundly. The stories tell us that human actions breaking taboos, showing disrespect to animals during or after the hunt, wasting food, even violating social rules within the community, all of this can anger Sedna.
How does that anger manifest? What does she do?
Well, one common image is her hair. Having lost her fingers, she can't comb her long hair anymore. When humans misbehave, their transgressions literally get tangled in her hair, making it matted and causing her pain and rage.
Tangled hair equals angry goddess.
Yes,
I see. And when she's angry?
She holds back the animals, keeps them close to her in the depths. No seals, no walruses means starvation for the communities above. Famine.
A direct consequence.
Yeah.
If you disrespect the source dries up. So how do they fix it? It sounds pretty dire.
It is. This is where the Ungakuk, the shaman, comes in. It's their responsibility to restore balance.
How? Do they just promise to be better?
It's much more involved. The shaman has to undertake a perilous journey, a spiritual trance journey, down to Sedna's realm at the bottom of the sea. It's dangerous, filled with obstacles.
And if they make it, what's the goal down there?
To appease Sedna. Often this involves the very intimate act of the shaman combing out her tangled hair, untangling the knots caused by human misdeeds, soothing her anger.
So they literally clean up the mess humans made right in her hair.
Exactly. The shaman listens to her grievances, acknowledges the disrespect shown by the community, and essentially acts as an intermediary. Only when she's calmed, when harmony is restored, might she release the animals again.
It's quite a cycle. It really emphasizes that connection, human actions, cosmic consequences, the need for intervention.
Absolutely. The whole story is so rich. It talks about creation, yes, but also betrayal, familial betrayal, initially, and disrespect, not just for Sedna, but for the entire natural world and the rules needed to live within it.
It underscores that idea of balance, doesn't it? Respect for life, following community rules. These aren't just suggestions, they're essential for survival.
They are the framework for maintaining that relationship with Sedna, and by extension, with the environment that sustains them.
So, thinking about Sedna's dramatic story, her direct link to the animals, what does that make you consider about, our own responsibilities today towards the natural world, the resources we depend on?
It certainly makes you think, doesn't it, about those deep connections, maybe the ones we don't always see, and how our actions, our collective behavior, might ripple outwards in ways we don't expect. It pushes us to consider respect and consequence on a much grander scale.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Look around you right now. Feel the chair you're sitting on, hear the sounds around you, maybe take a sip of coffee. Seems pretty real, doesn't it? Our senses constantly feed us information, painting a vivid picture of the world we inhabit. But how do you know with absolute certainty that any of it is actually real? How do you know you're not dreaming right now? Or plugged into some futuristic simulation like in the Matrix? This is Philosophy Nuggets from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Okay, just take a second right now. Feel the chain you're sitting on. Hear those sounds around you. It all feels pretty solid, right?
Real. Undeniably real.
But here's the thing we're diving into today. How can you be absolutely certain any of this is, actually real?
It's a fundamental question, isn't it? Our senses, sight, sound, touch, They paint this vivid picture for us. That's usually our baseline for reality.
Sure. Seems obvious. See it, hear it. It's real.
But philosophers have been poking holes in that assumption for centuries, our everyday experience. It might not be the bedrock of certainty we think it is. There are limits.
Okay, so where's a good place to start questioning?
Well, think about dreams. We've all had them, right? Those really vivid ones.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
While you're in the dream, it feels completely, utterly real. The emotions are real, the interactions, the places, it all feels genuine.
Until you wake up and poof, gone. Wasn't real at all.
Exactly. So if your brain can cook up such convincing realities while you're asleep, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How can you be totally sure you're not dreaming right now?
That's unsettling. It feels real, but so did the dream.
It's a powerful reminder that our subjective feeling of realness isn't always a guarantee, and it's not just sleep. Think about optical illusions.
Right. Like those pictures where lines look bent, but they're actually straight.
Precisely. They're clear examples, small ones maybe, but clear examples of our senses getting it wrong. Our vision gets tricked. What we perceive isn't what's actually there.
Okay, I see that.
So the question then becomes, if our senses can fool us in these small, obvious ways, could they be fooling us in much, much bigger ways about everything?
You mean like our whole perception of the world might be off? Like a giant optical illusion?
It's a possibility philosophers have wrestled with. And this isn't some newfangled internet idea either.
No. Who else thought about this?
Oh, this goes way back. Thousands of years ago, you have Plato with his allegory of the cave.
Right, I remember that. Prisoners in a cave.
Exactly. Chained up, facing a wall their whole lives. All they ever see are shadows cast on the wall from things happening behind them.
And they think the shadows are reality.
They think the shadows are everything that exists, yeah. For Plato, the point was, what if our everyday perceptions are like those shadows? Just sort of faint copies of a deeper, maybe unreachable, true reality.
Wow. So we could be like those prisoners, mistaking these limited perceptions for the whole truth.
That's the chilling thought, isn't it? And this whole line of questioning, this deep skepticism, really got a major push from René Descartes.
Descartes. Okay. I think, therefore I am that guy.
That's the one. He took doubt to an extreme level. He imagined this powerful, malicious being, an evil demon whose entire goal was to deceive him about absolutely everything, his senses, his memories, even basic math.
It's a total paranoia, basically.
Kind of, but systematic paranoia. He wanted to see if anything survived that doubt, and he found something. The very act of doubting. He realized that even if a demon was tricking him, he had to exist to be tricked. He was thinking. He was doubting. So, cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
Okay. So the thinking itself proved he was real, at least as a thinking thing, even if everything else was fake.
Precisely. His consciousness was the one thing he couldn't doubt away. It's a cornerstone idea. And this kind of thinking evolved, into even more modern, maybe wilder thought experiments.
Like what? Does it get weirder than an evil demon?
Oh, I think so. Consider the brain in a vat.
Okay, that's clinical.
Picture this. Someone, scientists maybe, removes your brain from your body. They keep it alive in a vat full of nutrients.
Right.
And they hook it up to a super powerful computer. This computer sends signals directly into your brain's nerve endings, perfectly simulating everything: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, your whole world.
Just like the Matrix.
Exactly like Matrix. Yeah, that's a perfect popular culture example. Your brain is experiencing a completely simulated reality. The terrifying question is,
how would you ever know?
How could you possibly prove you weren't just a brawn in a vat right now? If the simulation is perfect, your experience would be identical to what you think is real life.
Yeah, there's no outside reference point. You can't just peek out of the vat to check. That's genuinely mind-bending.
And that's really the core takeaway here. These thought experiments, they aren't just like fun intellectual puzzles. They force us to confront the very foundations of what we think we know. How reliable are our senses? How certain can we be?
It pushes you to ask, what does real even mean? Is it just whatever we experience, our subjective feeling? Or is there some objective world out there that exists whether we perceive it or not?
That's the big unanswered question, really. Is reality defined by the observer, or does it stand apart?
It definitely makes you pause, doesn't it? I mean, have you personally ever had one of those moments, like a weird coincidence or a glitch in the Matrix feeling that just made you think, hang on, what is going on here?
Oh, sure. Little moments of deja vu or things just feeling slightly off. They probably have simple explanations, but they do give you that flicker of doubt.
Yeah. And it makes you think, How much absolute certainty do we actually need day to day? We seem to manage okay without proving we're not in a vat every morning.
It's true. We operate on a kind of functional certainty, perhaps, enough to navigate the world. But the philosophical question about absolute certainty, that remains.
A fascinating puzzle indeed. Lots to think about there.
Absolutely. These questions really push at the edges of how we understand ourselves and, well, everything around us.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Just be yourself. How many times have you heard that piece of advice? It sounds so simple, so liberating, but then you stop and think, who is myself? What does it actually mean to be authentic in a world that constantly nudges us to fit in, to perform, to present a certain image? How do you define authenticity? And beyond the definition, in what ways can I, be more authentic in our daily lives? This is Questions That Matter from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning. Just be yourself. You hear that all the time, don't you? It sounds so liberating, so simple.
It really does, almost like a golden rule.
But hang on. If you actually stop and think about it, what does being authentic really mean?
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting. It seems simple, but there are layers,
Yeah.
So essentially, the idea is about being genuine.
Yeah.
Real. It's when what you do and say lines up with, well, your inner feelings and values.
Right. But the real you, that phrase itself makes me pause. Is there just one fixed real you we're supposed to find?
Good question. Or are we maybe more fluid?
Exactly. Do we change? Can you be authentically different at work compared to how you are with close friends or family? Is that still authentic?
That's a really crucial point. Thinking of the self as this, solid, unchanging thing. It might be too simple. We all adapt to different situations, don't we? And that adaptation isn't automatically inauthentic.
Okay.
Think about yourself 10 years ago. You've probably changed. Were you fake back then?
No, probably not. Just
Different.
different.
Younger? Right. It's growth. Where it gets tricky, I think, is when those different ways of being feel really out of sync. Like they clash with your core value.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads to another thing. Being true to yourself. What does that part mean? Does it mean you just blurt out every thought, unfiltered?
No, definitely not like that.
Or is there a balance, like authenticity, but also consideration?
That's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
Authenticity isn't just a free pass to say whatever, whenever.
Right.
True authenticity, I believe, is deeply connected to those core values we mentioned. Living by your values often means you have to be thoughtful about how you affect others.
So it's not just impulse.
No, it's about integrity. Acting with integrity, even when it's tough, not just, impulsively reacting.
This makes me think about, well, social media. We're all putting curated versions of ourselves out there, aren't we?
We are, mostly.
Can you really be authentic when you're building this online persona, selecting the highlights?
Well, it's attention, isn't it? Social media often pushes for that perfect highlight reel.
While we want to connect, share, constantly showing, only the idealized bits can create this gap. A gap between that online image and how we actually feel inside.
That pressure.
Exactly. That pressure to keep up appearances can, ironically, pull us away from genuine self-awareness, from accepting the messy, imperfect parts of ourselves. And those parts are definitely part of being authentic.
So, okay, if it's not about finding some mythical, unchanging self, and it's not about just saying everything, how do we actually do it? How do we become more authentic day to day?
Oh, it seems like it's less a destination. Like, okay, now I'm authentic and more. A process, an ongoing thing.
And a practice.
Yeah, maybe a practice of self-awareness, really tuning in. What are your values? What truly drives you? What activities make you feel energized versus
drained?
Noticing those feelings.
Yes. And then consciously choosing. Trying to bring your actions, how you show up in the world, a bit closer to that inner understanding.
So like closing the gap between the inside and the outside.
Exactly that. Reducing that distance. It takes reflection, constantly checking in.
How does it feel?
Yeah. Ask yourself, what does authenticity actually feel like for you? Is it peace, calm, congruence?
And the opposite. What are your personal red flags for being inauthentic? That knot in your stomach, feeling like you're performing.
Those signals are so important, paying attention to them.
These are really big questions for all of us listening. So maybe think about it. How do you define authenticity for yourself right now? And maybe, what's just one small thing, one tiny step you could take, maybe even today, to lean into that feeling a bit more, to be just a little more aligned?
Noticing those moments, like you said, of flow versus friction, they tell you a lot.
They really can.
And it's interesting, even those small acts, those little moments of awareness and choosing differently, they really add up over time.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Ever look back and think, oh, if only I'd started saving money back then? Or I really wish I'd learned guitar when I was a teenager. Or maybe I should have focused on my health years ago? That pang of regret, that feeling of a missed opportunity, is pretty universal. It's easy to get stuck there thinking it's simply too late now. But there's a wonderful piece of wisdom, often cited as a Chinese proverb, that addresses this perfectly. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. What makes this simple saying so profound? This is what they said from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
You know that feeling, right? That little voice saying, if only it started that sooner.
Oh, definitely.
Whether it's like saving a bit more money each month or finally learning that instrument.
Or maybe getting serious about fitness. Yeah.
Exactly. It's this universal sense of a missed opportunity, like the perfect moment just slipped by. We could all relate to that, I think.
Absolutely. We look back and play the what-if game. But, getting bogged down in that doesn't really help us, does it?
No, it doesn't. And that actually leads us perfectly into this piece of wisdom I really like. It's often called a Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Simple but profound.
Right. So today, let's kind of unpack that, dig into what it means and how we can actually use it.
Sounds good. What's interesting about the first part, the best time was 20 years ago, is how it validates that feeling.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it acknowledges, hey, you're right, starting earlier would have been ideal. It recognizes the value of foresight, especially for things that need time to, grow.
It's not about regret necessarily, but just acknowledging reality. Foresight pays off.
Exactly. But then comes the twist.
The really powerful part. The second best time is now.
That's the game changer. It shifts everything. It basically says, okay, the ideal past is gone. So what? What matters is this moment.
It pulls you right out of looking backward and forces you to look at, today.
Precisely. It's permission to act right now. It transforms that potential paralysis of regret into an opportunity. Your next best shot is always the present.
And it applies so broadly, it's amazing. It's not just trees.
Not at all. Think about skills learning code, a language, an instrument. Sure, maybe starting as a kid is great, but starting today, still incredibly valuable, opens up so much.
Or investing. Everyone says start young for compounding. True. But starting now beats never starting. Every single time.
Absolutely. Or relationships, building those connections takes time too, or that big project you've been putting off.
Even getting fit. You didn't start last year. Okay. Start today.
It's all about things that compound over time, things that require consistent effort. This saying gently pushes us away from dwelling on lost time.
And towards investing in the time we actually have, which is now.
Right. Your future self, will appreciate what you start today, just like you now might wish you'd started something back then. It's the same cycle.
So fundamentally, it's about seizing the present moment. It's the only point where we actually have control, where we can initiate change.
That's the core of it. The past, done. The future, not here yet. Now is where the action happens.
I love the balance it strikes. It doesn't ignore the past or pretend starting early isn't good.
No, it acknowledges that. But then it immediately pivots to empower you today. We can't teleport back 20 years to plant that tree.
But we can absolutely grab a shovel and plant one right now. And eventually there will be shade or fruit or whatever the metaphorical tree represents.
Makes you think, doesn't it? What's that tree for you personally? What's something you've been putting off because it feels, too late?
Maybe it's writing that book or starting a savings plan or even just learning to cook properly.
It could be anything. And then the follow-up question is, what makes today the perfect second best time to just take that first small step?
Yeah, what's one tiny thing you could do, like right after listening to this, to get that ball rolling?
It really highlights the potential packed into this very moment. Action is key.
That potential for growth is always there, waiting for us to just begin.
As they say, the journey starts with step one, and step one happens now.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
When you look in the mirror, what do you see? Just you, right? One single human being? Well, What if I told you that you are actually more like a walking, talking coral reef, a bustling city, a complex rainforest ecosystem absolutely teeming with life? Sounds crazy? Get ready to meet your human microbiome. This is Science Sparks from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Okay, when you look in the mirror, what do you actually see? Just you, right? One person. Seems simple enough.
Yeah, that's what you'd think. That's the immediate picture, for sure.
But what if that you isn't just you? What if it's more like a whole bustling city, an ecosystem teeming with tiny life?
That's exactly it. It's this concept of the human microbiome.
Microbiome, right. So explain that a bit.
Well, basically, every part of your body, your skin, inside your mouth, your gut, pretty much everywhere, it's home to trillions, literally trillions of microorganisms.
Trillions. Wow. Like what kind of things are we talking about?
Bacteria, mostly, but also fungi, viruses, even things called archaea, which are sort of like bacteria, but actually quite different. A whole microscopic world living on and in us.
And I read somewhere, get this, that these microbial cells, their numbers might actually be higher than our own human cells. Is that right?
That's a figure that's been discussed a lot. The exact ratio is debated. Maybe it's closer to 1-to-1. But the point is, there's an enormous number of them. It's definitely not trivial.
Yeah. Okay. Still, it kind of blows your mind, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And it completely flips the old script. For ages, we just thought of microbes as, germs, things to get rid of.
Right. Like pathogens, disease carriers.
Exactly. But the science now shows something totally different. The huge majority of these microbes living with us are either just harmless bystanders or they're actively helping us. They're part of the system.
Okay, helping us how? Like, what are they actually doing? Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's take the gut microbiome. That's the community inside your digestive system. It's incredibly important.
Okay, the gut. What happens there?
Well, for starters, they break down parts of food that our own bodies just can't handle. Big, complex carbohydrates, fiber, things like that.
So they're like unlocking nutrients for us.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Stuff we'd otherwise miss out on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not all. They also synthesize certain essential vitamins right there in your gut.
Really? Which ones?
Vitamin K is a big one, and some of the B vitamins too. Our bodies rely on these microbes to produce them.
Huh. So digestion, vitamins, what else?
Oh, a huge one is their role with the immune system. They help train it, especially early in life.
Train it? How does that work?
They essentially teach the immune system to tell the difference between friendly bacteria like themselves and harmful invaders, to know what's okay and what needs attacking.
Wow. So they're kind of like immune system tutors.
You could put it that way, yeah. It's crucial for developing a balanced immune response. And there's even research linking imbalances in the gut microbiome early on to maybe a higher risk of allergies or autoimmune problems later.
Fascinating. And they also sort of protect us, don't they? Like crowd out the bad guys.
Exactly. It's called colonization resistance. By just being there, taking up space, and using resources, they make it much harder for dangerous pathogens to move in and set up shop. It's like microbial turf wars happening constantly.
Okay, so the gut is obviously huge, but you said they're everywhere, not just inside.
That's right. Think about your skin. The microbes there contribute to the skin barrier, our first line of defense against the environment. They help maintain the right conditions, like pH balance.
And the mouth too, I guess.
Absolutely. Your oral microbiome is vital for oral health. Imbalances there linked to things like cavities and gum disease.
So is my microbiome the same as yours? Or is everyone different?
Oh, very different. Each person's microbiome is incredibly unique. It's like a fingerprint, really.
What makes it so unique then?
It's a mix of things. Your genetics play a role, definitely, but also your diet, massively. Your environment, where you live, your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Stress levels, exercise, even how you were born vaginally or a C-section can influence the initial microbes you get.
Wow. So many factors. It really makes you think about how diet and lifestyle choices aren't just affecting us, but this whole community inside us.
Exactly. And this whole field is just exploding with research right now.
Yeah. What kind of connections are scientists looking at?
All sorts. We've touched on digestion and immunity, but there are links being explored with mood and mental health, the whole gut-brain axis idea.
Right. I've heard about that.
Also connections to allergies, obesity, chronic inflammatory diseases. It seems like the microbiome touches almost every aspect of our health in some way. It's really a frontier area.
It almost makes you rethink the definition of human, doesn't it? We're not just individuals in isolation.
Not at all. Some scientists use the term superorganism.
Superorganism. I like that.
Yeah, it captures that idea that we're this collaboration, a community of human cells and microbial cells all working together, or sometimes not working so well together, which leads to problems.
So here's a thought then for everyone listening. How does knowing you're not just you, but you're hosting trillions of these tiny, important partners, how does that change how you think about things?
Yeah, about your health, maybe.
Or
what you eat.
Or even just what it means to be human, walking around in the world. It's kind of profound, isn't it?
It really is. It definitely encourages a more connected, maybe more ecological view of ourselves. We're ecosystems.
A fascinating perspective. And that was another Bite from English Plus podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Picture this. A thunderstorm is raging outside. Suddenly, you see it. A luminous ball, maybe the size of a grapefruit or a basketball, glowing white, yellow, or orange. It's hovering, drifting slowly through the air, perhaps moving erratically, maybe even seeming to pass right through a closed window pane before vanishing silently or with a quiet pop. Science fiction? A hallucination? Or the baffling phenomenon known as ball lightning? This is Unsolved Mysteries from English Plus podcast. Never stop learning.
All right, let's jump into this. We're looking at something really quite strange today, a natural phenomenon involving these glowing spheres people sometimes see.
Yeah, luminous balls of light, basically.
Yeah.
And the descriptions are pretty consistent. Think like grapefruit-sized, maybe up to a basketball.
Usually glowing white or yellow, sometimes orange, right?
That's what most reports say. And their behavior is, well, it varies.
Hovering seems common, or just kind of drifting along.
Mm-hmm. But then you get reports of them making these sudden, jerky movements, really erratic stuff.
And the truly bizarre part, the thing that always gets me, is people saying they've seen them pass right through solid objects, like closed windows.
I know, it sounds impossible, doesn't it? But these accounts go back centuries from all over the world. It's not a new thing.
Often connected with thunderstorms, I gather?
Often, yeah, that seems to be a common factor. But crucially, not exclusively, they've been reported in clear weather, too.
Huh, okay. And they don't stick around long, usually.
Typically not. We're talking seconds, maybe up to a minute in some cases. Very brief encounters.
But in that short time, floating, sometimes appearing to, follow metal things.
Yeah, there are reports like that. Or seemingly exploring a room before just popping out of existence.
Popping? Like a sound?
Sometimes silently, sometimes apparently with a soft pop or fizzle. Again, the reports vary. It's just weird.
It really is. Which brings us to the big problem for science, right? How do you even study this?
Exactly. It's so rare, so unpredictable. You can't just set up equipment and wait. It makes getting solid instrumental data incredibly difficult.
So we're left with loads of eyewitness accounts and some from very credible people, pilots, scientists, engineers, but very little hard measurement.
That's the core challenge, and why we don't have a single agreed-upon explanation yet. There are theories, though, some quite interesting ones.
Like the silicon idea.
The idea that a lightning strike hits the ground, especially soil rich in silicon, and the intense heat basically vaporizes it.
And that creates a glowing ball.
It could form a sort of silicon-based plasma, reacting with oxygen in the air. And, scientists have actually managed to create small glowing spheres like this in labs.
Okay, that's something. But does it explain everything? The size, the floating, the passing through walls?
That's the leap, isn't it? Scaling the lab result up and explaining those really strange behaviors. That's tricky.
Right. What else is out there, theory-wise?
Well, there's the microwave idea. Atmospheric microwaves.
How would that work?
The thinking is that certain conditions during storms could focus atmospheric microwave radiation, like a natural maser or laser effect. This focused energy could ionize a patch of air, creating a contained ball of plasma.
Wow. Okay, so the storm itself creates a kind of energy beam.
Potentially. It's another plausible physical mechanism. Then you have various electrochemical theories, too.
Based on the, charged humid air in a storm.
Exactly. Complex reactions happening in that highly energetic environment, maybe producing these luminous phenomena. It's all about finding an energy source and a containment mechanism.
And then there are the more out there ideas.
Yeah. You occasionally hear speculation about tiny pockets of antimatter annihilating or miniature black holes decaying, but those are generally seen as highly unlikely. Extremely unlikely, really.
And just saying everyone's hallucinating doesn't quite cut it, given the consistency of reports over time in place.
Probably not, especially with multiple witnesses sometimes and credible observers. It's hard to dismiss it all as just hallucination.
So the big questions remain. What powers it? Why is it spherical? And the big one, how does it seem to pass through solid stuff?
That last one really stumps people. It seems to defy basic physics as we understand it. It suggests something very unusual is going on, if those reports are accurate.
It truly is a scientific enigma, which, makes us wonder about you listening.
Mm-hmm. Have you, or maybe someone you know, ever witnessed something that sounds like this? A weird glowing ball in the sky or even indoors?
What did it look like? What did it do? We'd be fascinated to hear.
And thinking about those theories, we mentioned the vaporized silicon from lightning, the focused atmospheric microwaves, the complex electrochemistry.
Or even those less probable sort of sci-fi explanations.
Right. Which one sounds maybe the most plausible to you? Or perhaps a combination. What's your gut feeling?
It's one of those fascinating puzzles where nature still holds some pretty deep secrets.
Definitely highlights how much more there is to discover about our own planet.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Have you ever felt like you're at a turning point, where things seem to stand still for a moment before changing direction? Twice a year, the sun itself does this, reaching its highest or lowest point in the sky. This moment of celestial pause is the solstice. This is Word of the Day from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Do you ever have that feeling like, the world just takes a breath before something changes?
Yeah, with a pause.
Exactly, a moment of suspense. Well, it turns out the sun kind of does something like that twice a year. We call it the solstice.
That's right. The solstice, it's this really fascinating point where, from our view on Earth, the sun hits its highest spot or its lowest spot in the sky.
And for a moment there, it just seems to stop moving. North or south, I mean.
Pretty much. It appears to stand still for a bit.
And the name itself, solstice, that actually explains it, doesn't it?
It does. It comes straight from Latin. You've got sol, that's sun.
Okay.
And sister, which means to stand still.
Sun standing still, literally. Wow.
Exactly. So think about how the sun seems to travel across our sky over the year.
Higher in summer, lower in winter.
Right. So at the solstice, that journey hits its limit. Its northernmost point or its southernmost point, it reaches that extreme. And then, well, it starts heading back the other way.
Like climbing a hill, reaching the very top, and then starting down the other side.
That's a great way to put it. A turning point.
So we get two of these moments every year. Summer solstice, winter solstice. What's the big difference for us down here?
Well, summer solstice, that's when we get the most daylight. Longest day, shortest night. It's the peak of light, peak of warmth for that hemisphere.
Got it. Maximum sun.
And then the winter solstice is the opposite. It's the shortest day, the longest night, marks the peak of darkness, really, before the days slowly start getting longer again.
It's pretty amazing to think ancient cultures were so connected to this stuff. They actually built like huge monuments aligned to the solstices.
Oh, absolutely. Massive structures. And they had festivals, important rituals. It wasn't just, oh, look, the sun's high today.
No, it was much deeper than that.
Definitely. For loads of ancient societies, the solstices were fundamental, tied into everything, planting crops, harvesting, their whole understanding of the seasons, and often spiritual beliefs about the sun's power.
So these weren't just dates on a calendar. They were like vital rhythm markers for life itself.
Precisely. They lived by these cycles.
Which makes you think, right, we see these turning points in the sky, these moments where the sun stands still. Do we maybe have similar points in our own lives, our own sort of solstices?
That's a really interesting thought. Moments where things feel like they reach a peak or maybe a low point before shifting.
Yeah, like maybe you finish a huge project you poured everything into, that feeling of accomplishment, that peak moment. Maybe that's like a personal summer solstice.
I like that, a culmination. And then what about the other side? Those times that are, well, tougher, times of difficulty, or maybe just needing to pull back and reflect.
Yeah, that feels like it could be a personal winter solstice, doesn't it? A kind of inward turning, maybe, before things start to change again.
And the common thread there is that feeling of pausing, of standing still, whether it's the sun way up there or us down here taking stock at a key moment.
A point of balance, almost, before the shift happens.
Exactly, a moment of poise before the next phase begins.
So if we start recognizing these turning points in our lives as our own solstices, maybe it gives us some perspective.
I think it could. It's a reminder that things aren't always just full speed ahead or stuck in the dark. Life has these cycles.
Yeah, cycles of light and dark, activity and rest. Just like the seasons, just like the sun. It's all about change, really.
And maybe seeing our own peaks and valleys this way helps us navigate them a bit better, understanding the rhythm of it all.
So thinking about the solstices in your own life, the peaks and the valleys, what have those turning points taught you about your own cycles of light and dark, action and rest?
Something to definitely reflect on.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Ever watched your coffee pot like a hawk, especially when making that rich, strong brew directly on the heat? You know the moment. It looks calm, then suddenly coffee everywhere. Why does it do that? Why the sudden dramatic boil over? This is why it happens from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Ever been there? You're making coffee, maybe some strong Turkish coffee in one of those little Savo pots, right on the heat.
Watching it closely.
Yeah, and then boom, it just erupts all over the stove.
Oh, yeah. The coffee volcano. That happens fast.
It really does. So what's actually going on there? Like scientifically, it's not just boiling, is it?
No, not quite like plain water boiling. It's a bit more complex than that. Fascinating physics, actually.
Okay, break it down for us. Start with just water boiling, I guess.
Sure. So plain water, right? You heat it up. Bubbles of steam form, mostly at the bottom.
Right.
They rise up, hit the surface, and pop. Steam escapes. Pretty simple, really.
Okay, easy enough. So where does the coffee come in? We're talking super fine grounds, maybe sugar too sometimes.
Exactly. And those additions, especially the very fine grounds and their oils, maybe sugar if you use it, they change the liquid itself.
How so?
Well, two main things happen. First, the liquid gets a bit thicker, more viscous than just water.
Okay, thicker. Makes sense.
And second, probably the key thing here, the surface tension increases. Imagine the surface of the water gets like a stronger, stretchier skin.
A stronger skin. Huh. Okay. So you've got thicker liquid and this tougher skin on top. How does that mess with the steam bubbles?
Well, think about those bubbles forming at the bottom again. Now, rising through that slightly thicker liquid is harder work for them.
More resistance.
Right. And when they reach the top, that stronger surface tension acts like a lid almost. It stops them from just popping easily like they do in plain water.
So they get stuck underneath that skin.
Precisely. They start to collect just below the surface. Instead of escaping one by one, they bunch up.
I'm picturing it like, lots of little balloons inflating under a stretchy blanket. Is that a fair analogy?
That's a great analogy. Yeah, exactly like that. The blanket is that surface tension, and the balloons are the steam bubbles.
Okay, so more heat means more steam, more balloons pushing up under that blanket.
Exactly. And as more and more steam bubbles get trapped there, they all push together, the pressure underneath that surface starts to build up significantly.
Right. Sounds like where the drama happens. All that pressure. It has to go somewhere, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Eventually, the combined upward force from all those trapped steam bubbles just becomes too much for that surface tension skin to hold back.
It can only stretch so far.
Right. And then, quite suddenly, it fails. It breaks. And all that trapped steam, all that pressure escapes at the same time in one big rush.
Whoosh, taking the coffee with it.
Exactly. That sudden release of gas violently pushes the liquid, the foam, the grounds, everything up and out of the pot. That's your coffee volcano.
Wow. So it's the simultaneous escape. That's why it's so sudden and dramatic, not like the gentle bubbling of water.
Precisely. The pressure builds up kind of unseen, tracked below the surface until that breaking point. Plain water just lets the steam out continuously.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like with Turkish coffee, people lift the pot off the heat, right, to let the foam settle.
Yes, that's the art of it. You have to watch it like a hawk, manage the heat perfectly, and lift it just as that foam rises before the big eruption happens. Let it subside, maybe put it back for another rise. It's a delicate balance.
I wonder, does the type of bean or how fine the grind is change how explosive it gets?
Oh, likely. Finer grinds would probably increase viscosity and maybe surface effects more, potentially leading to a more dramatic event if you're not careful.
So fundamentally, that messy boil over is just trapped steam, making a very sudden, very dramatic exit.
That's the core of it, yeah. The coffee grounds and anything else in there just change the water enough to hold back that steam until it can't anymore.
It's cool science behind a common kitchen mishap. Makes you think, though.
Yeah.
Besides coffee, what other things have you cooked up that suddenly decided to redecorate the stove? Any surprise eruptions in your kitchen?
It definitely makes you appreciate the physics happening right there on your stovetop, even in simple cooking.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Imagine what if you're talking to your boss, telling them you're definitely working hard on that report, while secretly scrolling through cat videos. Suddenly, a giant flashing sign appears above your head reading, "Lie!" Or maybe your nose grows like Pinocchio's. Whatever the mechanism, imagine a world where every single lie you tell, big, small, white, or otherwise, is immediately exposed to everyone around you. What would that world actually be like? This is Imagine What If from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Okay, let's jump into a really mind-bending thought experiment today.
Sounds intriguing. What have you got?
Imagine this, a world where every single lie, doesn't matter how big or small, is instantly revealed.
Instantly? How? Like a flashing light above your head?
Yeah, maybe. Or, your phone buzzes, lie detected, something unavoidable.
Wow. Okay.
So, the first thing to ask yourself, maybe even you listening right now, is what's the first fib you told today that would have been flagged?
Oh, that makes you think immediately. Probably something small, some little social thing.
Exactly. Which brings us to the core of this deep dive.
Yeah.
What would that world actually be like?
Well, the first place you'd see massive change is just everyday chat, social interactions.
Right. Those little white lies we barely even notice.
Oh, I love your new haircut. When you're thinking, well, something else entirely.
Or the classic excuse, sorry, I'm busy tonight, when really you just want to stay in.
Yeah. Or traffic was terrible.
If all those just vanished, poof, how do conversations even work?
Do we become brutally honest? Like painfully direct?
Or maybe just incredibly awkward or silent.
It's hard to say. It would definitely ripple into our relationships, wouldn't it?
Hugely. On the one hand, maybe you get this incredible level of trust, radical honesty.
True. Absolutely knowing that what someone says is the truth. That could be amazing for building connection, real connection.
But then, the flip side, is there such a thing as too much honesty in relationships?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Can intimacy survive constant, unvarnished truth? Even the little things.
Think about compliments instead of, you look amazing.
You might get, well, your appearance is certainly adequate today.
Exactly. It's maybe not quite the same warm feeling, is it? Could relationships even handle that?
It's a massive question mark.
No.
And zooming out, think bigger. Society.
Oh, yeah. Politics. Forget about it.
Campaign promises, statements, instantly fact-checked. Or lie-checked, I guess.
Yeah, imagine the news alerts. Advertising would have to change completely, too.
It'd have to be purely factual. This product contains these ingredients. End of story.
What about courtrooms? Diplomacy between nations.
The landscape is just unrecognizable. Would it make things more just? More fair?
Or would everything just seize up? Grind to a halt because navigating the unvarnished truth is too hard.
And how would we adapt as people, individually?
Would we become incredibly careful, choosing every single word?
Measuring everything. Or maybe we'd get really good at omission. Not lying, but just not saying things.
Yeah, mastering the art of silence or the carefully phrased truth.
Perhaps we'd all just become quieter, more reserved, less willing to engage if the risk of exposure is so high.
How would our actual personalities change, do you think? If that tool, lying for protection or social ease, was just gone?
There could be some upsides, maybe. We might develop thicker skins emotionally.
Learn to handle directness better?
Possibly. And maybe even more compassion, knowing everyone's flaws and truths are out there.
That's optimistic, but I can also easily see it going the other way.
Towards a much harsher world.
Yeah, more judgmental, more critical. Constant exposure might just mean constant criticism.
True. It really forces you to look at why we lie in the first place.
Right. It's not always malicious, is it? Often it's about navigating social situations smoothly.
Protecting ourselves, protecting others sometimes, maintaining privacy.
So what happens when that basic human tendency runs headfirst into a system demanding absolute truth?
Where's the balance?
Yeah.
What do we value more, raw truth or, social harmony? That clash seems inevitable.
It really makes you appreciate the sort of delicate dance we do now, the unspoken agreements, the little fudges that keep things running.
Yeah, how much do we rely on those things we don't say, or the things we say that aren't quite the whole truth?
It's a fascinating thing to consider, that balance between truth and, well, grace in our own world.
Indeed. Consider the delicate balance between truth and social grace in our current world. How much do we rely on those unspoken and sometimes untrue agreements?
And that was another bite from English Plus podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
And now that we've talked about our Imagine What If segment for today, let's continue with the short story written by Danny based on this Imagine If scenario. This short story is called The Weight of Unspoken Things. Let's listen to the story together. Enjoy!
The Weight of Unspoken Things, a short story by Danny Ballin. The silence stretched, thick and heavy as velvet, after Clara asked the question. Not the comfortable silence of old friends, but the thick, waiting kind that had become common since the change. Alara traced the rim of her cooling coffee cup. So, Clara prompted gently, her eyes searching Alara's face. Did you enjoy the exhibition? Alara opened her mouth, the polite, easy affirmation ready on her tongue. It was interesting, but the words caught. It wasn't interesting, not really. It was derivative, pretentious, and honestly, a little boring. In the old days, the little white lie would have slipped out, smooth and unnoticed, a necessary social kindness. Now, the very thought of uttering the falsehood created a palpable resistance, a cold knot in her stomach that she knew Clara would somehow feel, just as Alara would feel Clara's if the roles were reversed. No flashing signs, no growing noses, just a subtle shift in Clara's posture, a flicker in her eyes, as the undeniable knowledge settled between them. A truth was being bent. She tried a different tack. The colors were very bold. Technically true. But the qualification hung there, weak and exposed. Clara's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. A flicker of disappointment, quickly masked. Bold, Clara repeated softly. Right. Navigating this new landscape meant conversations became minefields. Compliments became exercises in careful wording, searching for the tiny sliver of truth that wouldn't wound. Your new haircut certainly changes your look. Instead of, I love it. That was quite a performance. Instead of, you were amazing. Honesty was brutal, yes, but the effort of navigating around direct falsehoods was exhausting. Alara looked out the cafe window. She saw a couple arguing on the pavement, their faces tight with unconcealed frustration. No point storming off with a slammed door and a lie about needing space. The real reason I can't stand looking at you right now would be as clear as the spoken word. Further down, a man negotiating a price with a street vendor shook his head, his stance broadcasting. That's far too much with absolute certainty, no room for feigned indifference. Relationships had become starker, cleaner, some said, deeper perhaps, stripped bare of pretense. But Alara missed the softness, like worn fabric, the gentle blurring of edges that allowed people to coexist without constantly grating against each other's raw nerves. She missed the easy laughter that followed a slightly embellished anecdote, the comfort of a reassurance she knew wasn't entirely true but offered solace anyway. Could they adapt? Would they develop thicker skins? Or would they simply retreat, guarding their vulnerable truths behind walls of silence? Alara looked back at Clara, who was now studying the menu with unnecessary focus. The unspoken truth of Alara's opinion on the exhibition lay between them, a small, cold weight. The coffee's good, though, Alara offered. Clara looked up, a genuine, small smile finally reaching her eyes. Yes, she agreed. The coffee's always good. It was a start. A tiny, unvarnished truth, light enough to hold on to in this stark new landscape. Maybe that was enough.
Today we're looking into a really interesting short story called The Weight of Unspoken Things by Danny Ballin.
That's right. And it's set in this fascinating world post something called the change, where telling a lie actually makes you feel physically bad.
Yeah, like a palpable negative sensation.
Yeah.
So we're focusing on a conversation between two friends, Clara and Alara, right after they've been to an art exhibition.
Mm-hmm. And the core question we're digging into is, what does this whole setup tell us about communication, about relationships, and maybe even the nature of truth when all those little social fibs become, well, physically painful?
Let's start with the silence between them. Balin calls it a thick, waiting kind of silence. That's pretty loaded, isn't it?
It really is. It's not like a comfortable silence you might share with a close friend. This one feels tense, full of things not being said, maybe negative things.
Right, because Alara can't just say the exhibition was interesting, that usual polite fallback.
Exactly. She wants to, it seems. But the lie feels too heavy, too unpleasant because of the change. It really shines a light on how much we might rely on those little, maybe harmless insincerities.
It really does. Her internal struggle is quite telling. This ingrained habit, offering polite feedback, just clashes head-on with this new physical reality.
Yeah, it makes you think about how automatic those responses were, like complimenting a, well, maybe not so great haircut.
Or giving feedback in a performance review, trying to soften the blow. The story really lays out this tension, this trade-off between stark, maybe brutal honesty and the cushioning effect of white lies.
And it's not just personal stuff. The story gives these little glimpses, right? An arguing couple, someone haggling with a vendor.
Mm-hmm.
Those brief moments suggest it's bigger than just Alara and Clara. Society itself seems to be shifting because you can't easily fake emotions or intentions anymore. Things get more direct.
Maybe more abrasive, too?
Potentially, yeah. And Alara thinks about this. She reflects that relationships feel starker, cleaner, even deeper, perhaps.
But she also notes they lack softness. That's the key, isn't it? What's lost in this pursuit of, or maybe forced imposition of, raw truth?
That's a central question. Are we gaining deeper connections at the cost of, social grace? That comforting layer we used to have? Is all that pretense actually bad?
It's complex, but then there's that little moment at the end about the coffee.
Yes.
They both just agree, honestly, that the coffee is good. It seems small, but why does it feel so significant in the story?
Well, I think it's because it's a simple, shared, unvarnished truth. No need for politeness or deception, just a genuine agreement. It suggests maybe that connection is still possible.
Like a small anchor of authenticity in this new landscape. It shows they can adapt, maybe.
Exactly. It hints at resilience, that genuine connection can find a way, even if it looks different. It might be built on these smaller, simpler truths now.
So pulling back, what are the main themes here? It seems to be fundamentally about truth, obviously, but also how we communicate, how much relies on the unspoken.
Precisely. The change forces a redefinition of truth and communication. It strips away ambiguity, making everything more exposed, maybe more vulnerable. You see it in Alara's inner turmoil and even Clara's subtle reactions.
It definitely makes you think. I mean, considering this world where lies hurt physically, what unspoken things might be shaping our interactions right now, even without a change?
That's the provocative thought, isn't it? What weights are we carrying in our own silences? It's a powerful way to reflect on our own communication.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Ever felt like you're juggling too many things, and if you leave any two together, disaster strikes? Well, let's make that literal. Picture this. You're standing on a riverbank with a wolf, a goat, and a rather large, tempting-looking cabbage. You need to get all three across to the other side using a small rowboat. Here's the catch. The boat can only carry you and one other thing at a time, either the wolf, the goat, or the cabbage. This is Tease Your Brain from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
Ever bump into one of those problems that seems, really simple at first glance?
Oh, yeah, the kind where you think, piece of cake, but then...
Exactly. Then you hit these hidden rules, these little constraints, and suddenly it's way trickier.
Definitely. Those are often the most interesting ones, though.
Well, we've got a classic one for you today, a real head-scratcher. Picture this. You're standing by a river.
Okay, got it, riverbank.
And you need to get three things across. A wolf, a goat, and a big head of cabbage.
Wolf, goat, cabbage. Okay. Sounds potentially problematic already.
Right. And the catch is you've only got this tiny little boat.
How tiny?
Tiny enough for just you, the rower, and only one of those things at a time. Wolf, goat, or cabbage.
Okay, so no piling everything in at once. That's constraint number one.
Yep. And here comes the big one, the real tricky bit. You can't leave the wolf alone with a goat.
Predictable outcome there. No goat.
And you also can't leave the goat alone with the cabbage.
Also predictable. Bye-bye, cabbage.
Exactly. You, thankfully, are safe. The wolf doesn't fancy you, and you don't eat raw cabbage. So you're fine.
Well, that's a relief. So the person is just the transporter, basically.
Basically. So the puzzle for you listening is, how do you get all three, wolf, goat, cabbage, safely to the other side without, any unfortunate snacking incidents?
It immediately makes you think about those pairings, doesn't it? Wolf, goat. Goat, cabbage.
Totally. So take a second, visualize it. River, boat, you, wolf, goat, cabbage. What's the very first move you'd make? What seems obvious?
Well, my first instinct might be get the wolf across first. Get the main danger sorted. But hang on.
What happens if you do that? You take the wolf across. What's left behind?
Right. Goat and cabbage alone. That's no good. Instant failure.
Instant failure. Okay, so wolf first is out. What about the cabbage first?
Okay, cabbage across. Then you leave it. But then the wolf and goat are left on the starting side. Also not good.
Still doesn't work. Okay, so it seems like the goat is involved in both problem scenarios.
Exactly. The goat is the common denominator of danger, you could say. It either eats or gets eaten.
So thinking about that, maybe the goat needs special attention first.
That feels right. If you take the goat across first.
Okay, let's walk through that. Step 1, you put the goat in the boat, row across.
Right. Now you and the goat are on the far bank. What's left on the starting bank?
Just the wolf and the cabbage.
And are they okay together?
Yeah. Wolf doesn't eat cabbage. Yeah. Okay, step 1 seems safe.
Safe so far, but you need the boat back, right?
Right. Can't leave it on the far side. So step 2, you row back alone.
Okay. You're back at the start with the wolf and the cabbage. The goat is waiting safely on the other side.
Now what? You have to take something else across. Whose it can be? The wolf or the cabbage?
Well, let's think. If you take the wolf across...
You arrive on the far side, where the goat is waiting.
Wolf and goat together, unsupervised by you. Bad idea.
Very bad. Okay, so not the wolf. What if you take the cabbage across next?
Okay, you row the cabbage across, you get to the far bank.
And who's waiting there?
The goat.
Goat and cabbage. Also unsupervised. Disaster again.
Okay, this is trickier than it looked. We took the goat across, came back. But now, taking either the wolf or the cabbage creates a problem on the other side.
It really does. It feels like a dead end.
Yeah.
But there's a solution, and it involves doing something that feels, well, a bit weird.
Something counterintuitive?
Totally.
Yeah.
You took the goat across, you came back alone. Now you pick up, say, the wolf.
Okay, pick up the wolf. Step 3, row the wolf across.
Now you're on the far bank with the wolf and the goat. We already said that's bad if you leave, right?
Right. Can't leave them.
So here's the clever bit. You don't leave them. You drop off the wolf, but you put the goat back in the boat.
You bring the goat back to the starting side.
Exactly. Step 4, return with the goat. It feels like going backwards.
But it solves the immediate problem on the far bank. The wolf is there alone now, which is fine. And you've brought the goat back to the start?
Right. So now back at the start, you have you, the boat, the goat, and the cabbage. On the far side, just the lonely wolf.
Okay. Progress. Sort of. What's next? Can't leave the goat and cabbage together here.
No. So you drop off the goat and you pick up the cabbage.
Right, because the wolf is already over there. Step 5, take the cabbage across.
You row the cabbage across. Now on the far bank, you have the wolf and the cabbage.
And they're fine together. Excellent. So wolf and cabbage are safely across.
Safe and sound. You leave the cabbage there. What do you have to do now?
Still need the goat.
Okay.
And the boat is on the wrong side.
Right. So step 6, row back alone. Again.
Okay, back at the start, only the goat is left there now.
Just the goat. All alone. So final trip.
Seems like it. Step 7, pick up the goat, row across one last time.
And you arrive on the far bank. You get out. And who's there?
The wolf, the cabbage, and now the goat. All 3, safe and sound.
We did it. Wow. Okay, let's count those trips. That felt like a lot of back and forth.
Let's see. 1, goat across. 2, return alone. 3, wolf across.
4, return with the goat. That's the key one.
Right. 5, cabbage across. 6, return alone. 7, goat across.
7 trips. 7 single crossings to solve it. And that step, bringing the goat back, it really is the linchpin, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's the moment you realize a simple forward progression won't work. You have to temporarily undo something, move a piece back to allow the final solution.
It's a fantastic little illustration of, like, strategic thinking. Getting ahead, seeing the consequences, not just of the next step, but the one after that.
Exactly. You can't just focus on getting items across. You have to manage the state on both riverbanks at every single stage. It's about constraint management.
Yeah, it really makes you think. It's not just about efficiency in the moment, but about navigating the rules.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, have you ever run into a real-life problem, maybe not with wolves and goats, but where you had to take a step back to actually move forward?
Oh, definitely. I think it happens all the time, whether it's, project planning or even sometimes in arguments or negotiations. You realize you've hit a wall because of an earlier decision, and you might need to backtrack and change something foundational to get unstuck. This puzzle is just a very neat, self-contained example of that kind of logic.
It really is. A simple setup, but a surprisingly elegant, if slightly roundabout solution. A good mental workout. So a question for you listening. What's the trickiest puzzle like this, maybe with different items or rules, that you've ever come across?
Yeah, there are lots of variations on this theme. Always fun to puzzle through.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Have you ever had to make a really tough decision, plan a complicated event, or bite your tongue when you really wanted to say something impulsive? Where does that control, that planning ability, that sense of judgment come from? Say hello to the CEO of your brain, the frontal lobe. This is Know Your Brain from English Plus Podcast. Never stop learning.
You know those times when you really, really have to focus? Like maybe you're staring at a tricky problem or trying to plan out something big.
Yeah, or even just stopping yourself from saying something you might regret later.
Exactly. Where does that ability, that sort of control, where does it actually come from?
Well, that's where we dive into the real powerhouse behind your forehead, the frontal lobe.
Ah, the frontal lobe. Right up front. Makes sense. I've heard it called the CEO of the brain.
That's a great way to put it. It's the largest of the four main lobes, and it handles all those, high-level executive functions.
Executive functions. Sounds pretty official. Like a management team for your head.
Basically, yeah. Think about planning, decision-making. When you're weighing up options, trying to figure out the likely outcome.
Like deciding what to wear or maybe something bigger like a job change?
Exactly that. Or even investments. Your frontal lobe is constantly working, predicting, choosing. What's a recent choice your inner CEO had to grapple with?
Even just deciding what project to tackle first this morning, I guess. It's kind of wild thinking about it that way.
It is. And it doesn't stop there. What about when you hit a snag? A real challenge.
Yeah, when things go wrong.
That's problem solving kicking in. The frontal lobe helps you, analyze what's happening, brainstorm strategies, find a way through. It's your internal strategist.
Okay, so planner and strategist. What about just holding information in your head for a second, like remembering a phone number someone just told you?
That's working memory. Another key job for the frontal lobe. It's like your brain's temporary sticky note, holding info you need right now and letting you sort of juggle it mentally.
Right. Now, this is interesting. How much does it shape, who we are, our personality, how we deal with people?
Oh, hugely. It plays a really significant role in your temperament, your social skills, your grasp of social rules and expectations.
Wow. So changes in that area could really affect how someone acts.
Absolutely. It's known that damage or changes there can have quite noticeable effects on personality and social behavior.
Makes sense. Okay, what about resisting temptation? You know that little voice saying, maybe one piece of cake is enough.
Yes, that's your frontal lobe again, handling impulse control and regulating your emotions. It's the part that helps you pause, think, and maybe resist doing something purely on impulse.
Good to know there's something in there trying to keep me in check. Does it do physical stuff too, like actual movement?
It does. Towards the back of the frontal lobe, there's a specific area called the motor cortex.
Okay.
And that's what initiates your voluntary muscle movements. Walking, reaching, typing, that all starts there.
So it's involved in thinking and doing.
Yeah.
Fascinating. What about right now? Paying attention to this chat.
Yep, that's attention and concentration. Your frontal lobe helps you filter out distractions, maybe that notification buzz or background noise, and stay focused on the task at hand, like listening right now.
Okay, so it's definitely being tested by my phone then. What are some things that really challenge your frontal lobe's focus?
Oh, definitely trying to multitask complex things. So yeah, the big picture is that it takes all this information from other brain areas and helps decide what to do next, guiding goal-directed behavior.
A central command center, really.
Pretty much. And interestingly, it's the very last part of the brain to fully mature. Development often continues right into the mid-20s.
Mid-20s, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That sheds some light on teenage decision-making, maybe.
It certainly suggests a potential link, doesn't it? The hardware isn't quite finished running the final software updates yet, you could say.
So, summing it up, it's our planner, our strategist, our conscience or impulse controller, and the director telling our body to move. That's a lot.
It's doing an incredible amount constantly.
Okay, think about this. Just one moment from your day-to-day where you know your inner CEO was active. Maybe making breakfast, dealing with an email. How does understanding the frontal lobe change how you view that simple moment?
It really underscores how vital it is, doesn't it, for just navigating the world effectively and, appropriately.
And that was another bite from English Plus Podcast. Stay curious and never stop learning.
And that brings us to the end of another eclectic journey with Plus Bites. We've explored everything from the depths of human connection and the mysteries of the past to the wonders within us and the science of our daily lives. We hope these bites have sparked your curiosity and given you plenty to think about. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss out on future explorations, please make sure to subscribe to English Plus Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And for our dedicated listeners who want even more, you can unlock exclusive premium content, including full transcripts, ad-free episodes, and bonus materials by becoming a premium subscriber on Apple Podcasts or by joining our community on Patreon. You can find the links to subscribe and support us in the description of this episode. Your support helps us continue to create content that helps you never stop learning. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.